Welcome into the latest ESPN headline. I'm Prim Saripapa alongside our NFL insider, Bill Polian. Well, a health scare for the Ravens general manager, Ozzie Newsome, who had to be rushed to the hospital following their game versus the Chicago Bears on Sunday. So we want to be sure that we tell you guys that we don't know exactly what health condition he did suffer, but this is what a coincidence that so far this season, Bill, we have seen John Fox have to undergo a heart operation, obviously the head coach for the Broncos, and then the Texans coach, Gary Kubiak, suffer a mini stroke. And there's been conversations about the stress that one deals with in the front office, and you know more about that. What can you tell us about how stressful it is having to deal with all of that in the front office?
Well, my friend Bob Knight used to have a great statement saying, and I think he was quoting a general at some point, but he said, you know, I don't have heart attacks, I give them. Well, that's one way to look at it. But by the other side of the coin, you're in a situation where it is extremely, extremely stressful. Any job in the NFL is stressful because of the amount of money involved. The money brings with it media scrutiny that has increased almost by 100-fold from the time that I started, and maybe 1,000-fold from the time I started in the league. That brings with it unique problems that you have to deal with. And now we're into the age of Twitter and Facebook, et cetera, which you know, none of us ever had to deal with before. This is new ground. And so all of that is pretty stressful. And so you're working overtime to try and create a sense of reality among your players and coaches so they can focus on the game and not be distracted by perceptions and sidelights and stories. Add to that the idea that Ozzie immediately after he got off the plane and went to the celebration in Baltimore, had to go about deconstructing the roster. That takes an emotional toll. I've been there, done it. It's terrible. That's the nature of the salary cap. That speaks again to the money. The reason the game is so popular is because we have the salary cap, because good teams are handicapped. And Ozzie, quite frankly, said, we're not doing what we did the last time around. We're not staying too long at the fair to the point where we're handicapped cap-wise for years into the future. But the deconstruction of that roster is hard. Ozzie's a good man. He's a loyal man. He's a consummate professional, a Hall of Famer as a player, very likely, in my opinion, should be a Hall of Famer as a GM. Bottom line, that is hard to do because now you're letting go of people who won the Super Bowl for you. And you've got to replace them. You've got to reconstruct the roster, and you do it without 1 day of rest. So this is a I'm not crying about it. You know, we all love it. That's why we're in it, and we're paid well. But does it take its toll? Yes, it does.
And you were obviously the GM and the team president for the Indianapolis Colts for over 10 years. So can you share some of your experiences or provide any examples?
Well, the hardest thing I had to do was deconstruct the roster every year. Let go of players who were really good players because of the salary cap. That's what the cap was designed to do. Ozzie and I were there at the inception of it. We were part of the people, some of the people who helped design it. And it is a situation at its heart which handicaps good teams. And when you have to do that, when you actually have to call a player in and say, I can't pay you what you're worth. You need to go out on the open market. And he says, I want to stay. This is where I want to be. I've contributed to this team. Yes. I know your family. I know your children. I please, you know, understand that we don't want to do this, but the cap forces us to do this. It's stressful. It's difficult. It's the worst possible thing you have to do because general managers and football people, and Ozzie's nothing if not a football person, and I like to think I am as well, we're about the positive. We're about saying, come on, you can play for us. You can help us win. We got a role for you, you know, and we'll help you earn a good living. We're all about positive. We're not about negative almost ever. And then you're put in this situation from the time the season ends until the time really after the draft when you go to minicamp, where you're deconstructing the roster and you're making negative decisions because that's what the cap forces you to do. Once they paid the quarterback, they're in a deconstruction mode.
It's tough because you have to be a businessman, but you also have a lot of wonderful personal relationships with all of these people.
That's correct.
Be sure to check out Bill Polian on NFL Insiders at 3 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Wonderful insight. For Bill Polian, I'm Prim Saripapat with your latest ESPN headline.